Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Big D. These are my true life stories of the strange and unusual. When I tell these stories, keep in mind I don't make up bullshit and embellish the story in any way. I had more things happen to me throughout my life. I'm 62 years old. I really can't explain why things have happened to me more than other people in their lives. Some people can go through life without experiencing anything that's strange or unusual and whatnot. Excuse me. But back in the late 70s, I was in the United States Army. We were, oh, by the way, this story is about my Bigfoot experience. And keep in mind, back then, no one really even talked about a Bigfoot or anything like that. Really didn't watch a whole lot of TV back then. Just too busy doing other things. People's lifestyles, like myself, were not sitting around watching the boob tube all the time, as they say. But anyway, getting back to it, like I said, back in the late 70s when I was in the United States Army, we went to northern Michigan. And we were setting up a bivouac there, which is like a campsite, basically. Set up a motor pool and tents and stuff to service the vehicles and for sleeping quarters and the mess tent, stuff like that. So there was like, I don't know, maybe 16 of us on the advanced party to set up the base area. We were on the furthest post, deep in the woods, and this is during the summertime in northern Michigan. And anyway, we got through setting up all the tents and the equipment and whatnot. And the rest of the guys took off. They left 2 people there to guard the bivouac site, which was me and another guy. So we're in this 20-man tent. And, there was a couple cots in there for myself and one for him, of course. And just got through smoking a cigarette and took my boots off and everything, and I started to lay down, and we were talking a little bit, Anyway, this something hit the support rope that holds up the side of the tent, and it pulled it outward, and it was, whatever it was huge, right? And right immediately when it hit that rope, you could hear this like it was disgusted, whatever it was. Now, me and the other guy at this point are freaking out. This is like late night, maybe early morning, maybe. And I'm like, my God, man, what the hell? What would make such a noise like that? Is it a bear? Do bears make that type of sound? Now, we were keeping pretty quiet because me and the other guy are freaked out. I mean, the only weapons we had was survival knives and all the like M16s, M60s, and stuff like that was all locked up in the weapons truck. And it would take quite a bit to get that truck open to get the weapons and stuff out like that. So, right after the tent got pulled outward from this hitting the guide rope, then hearing that, like it was like pissed off. There's a little window on the side of the tent. There's several of them up and down the tent, right, to let air in and whatnot and shit, so you can see out. Well, the moonlight was probably a quarter to 1/3 moon, maybe, I want to say, roughly in that neighborhood. Like, see how well your memory is when you're 62 years old. But anyway, let's get back onto the story. When I looked out, I could see this ape man type creature. Now, at this point, he was over by this truck. It was a deuce and a half, is what we call it, which is a deuce and a half means 2.5 ton truck. And I could see this ape man type creature. Just a silhouette of him. You couldn't really make out face details and shit like that. But you could tell it was big. And it definitely wasn't a bear. He was, the reason I said 7 or 8 foot tall, because in them deuce and a half trucks, the hood is up there quite a ways. I mean, a 6 foot man standing next to that thing can't really look really much up over the hood of that damn thing. But this thing had no problem. When I observed him, when I looked out the window, it was just like a couple seconds right after he hit the tent, and I got up and pulled that flap back on this window and looked out. And the other guy got up too, just within a second, and he was looking out as well. And I remember we were looking at this thing for like a second. He goes, "What the fuck, man?" And when he said, "What the fuck," this huge ape man type creature turned around and looked in our direction. Now, keep in mind, my heart was already pumping, and we were pretty excited, right? Freaked out, basically. But when it turned and looked at us, my heart really started pounding. I thought, oh man, this thing's going to come after us. And right at that second that happened, I remember when I was like 12, 13 years old, my mother was telling my grandmother that they almost hit an ape man type of creature back in Ohio, out in the country. This is back in the 60s, right? And at nighttime. And they could see his face, and it looked, she's compared it to almost a human-like face in a way. But I remember she called it an ape man type of creature. And I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing that I never thought something like this would ever exist, or I would ever see something like this in my life. And the other guy, he's done so freaked out, and I said, you know what, I think we should stay inside the tent and not go out there, because there's no way I'm going to confront something that big, not even knowing what the fuck it was, really, out there late at night on the furthest outpost. No one's supposed to be around anywhere even close to us. We had a whole company of men there. I would say probably maybe 100 guys, but there was only 2 of us there that night, because they there a few days in advance to set up the tents and equipment, like I stated earlier at the beginning. And anyway, after he says, "What the fuck is that?" I'm not too sure word for word, but somewhere along that lines. And it looked back over at us. And when it looked back over at us, it turned actually the other way and slowly walked away. But what was funny is that we heard an additional set of footsteps from the other side of the tent, which we couldn't see. So I'm sure there was two of these there checking out our so-called campground, which is actually a bivouac site area. So the next morning we didn't report nothing to nobody. And but yeah, as far as my Bigfoot experience, that's what it boils down to. Now, probably about, I want to say 5, 6, 7 days later, in that same bivouac area. Now, everybody was there at this time. Probably about, I don't know, 100 men, maybe roughly. It don't really matter anyway. We were laying there. We could hear this thump, 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 thump. And another guy says, "Hey, do you hear that?" I said, "Yeah." Now, sometimes when you run equipment like trucks, bulldozers, and such type of equipment like that, when it starts cooling off, the metal starts expanding, extracting, and whatever, expanding. You know what I mean? And it makes these little tink sounds. We thought maybe that's what it was, but the more closely you listen to it, there's a drum beat. So this other guy, he says, "Hey man, let's go check this out, because there's not supposed to be anybody even close to us." And so there was like, I don't know, 3 of us, maybe 4. We now there's a few other guys that heard this, and but we figured us 3 or 4 of us would go out, would check this out. And you could hear it off in the distance. And we started walking towards the direction that we thought we heard this drum beat, I should say, coming from. And we've been walking about 5, maybe 10 minutes through the woods. You could hear this thumping sound, but it was so weird because it seemed like at this point we were almost chasing this sound. And you could hear branches cracking and shit like that off in the distance from us. And I'm kind of freaked out a little bit, because I remember I seen this 8-man type creature, which now we call it Bigfoot, Sasquatch. It's got a few other names, but anyway, we came up over this little hill, and we seen like a glow way off in the distance, maybe like from a campfire. Okay, I thought, all right, let's walk over that way. Maybe that's where that noise was coming from. And so we continued to see a little bit of a glow. Then we had to walk down into a little creek area. So you got to go down a little bank, then come back up the other side and everything. And we went down, and when we came back up to the other side where we thought we would see this glow, there was nothing there. You couldn't see the glow no more. And at that point, you couldn't even hear the drum beat anymore. And so we probably walked about, I don't know, I'd say 30, 40 yards. And we came upon this little meadow. Real small meadow, you know. And there was nothing there. And that's where the campfire should have been. Or even maybe the drum beats came from, right there in that little area. And anyway, we decided, well, whatever it was, it's gone now. You know, you didn't even see no evidence of any campfire or anything like that. We walked back. It was probably about a 15-minute walk total. And when we got back to the tent, this one sergeant came up to us. He goes, did you guys see anything, or the drum beats? Did you hear it, or did you find anything out? And we said, no, Sergeant, no, we didn't. He goes, I could have told you, you're just wasting your time. He goes, about 2 years in this same neck of the woods, we have experienced these particular, what we call ghost drums. Because there used to be a lot of Native American Indians back up in that region. So we were experiencing something supernatural at this point. So northern Michigan is kind of like a magical place. I mean, think about it. I experienced a Bigfoot encounter, and a few days later, I hear these drum beats. There was a slow boom, boom, boom. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. And I want you to please, if you like my stories, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to me. And I would like to hear your stories as well. Anything about the paranormal or the strange and unusual, leave a comment. And maybe I'll put it on a future show. But I'm going to try to do one at least every month. And I want to thank you again. Have a good evening.